Hi, Ian. It's really good to have you here. Thank you so much for coming in.
Hi, a pleasure to be here.
And also, just in case there's anyone who may not know you, as per usual, do you mind introducing yourself officially? What you do, who you are?
Hi, I'm Ian. I'm responsible for everything you don't like about WoW, and the team is responsible for everything you love. I try not to get in the way too much. Technically, game director.
Nice. All right. Yeah. So, wanted to talk about WoW today. I think we're all excited about
Seems like a
midnight.
good idea.
Yeah, just behind the corner. And I wanted to hop into a bunch of different things depending on what time allows. I realize that the time is very limited,
Sure.
especially since tech issues also got in the way. But let's start with a kind of broader question. It's a discussion that we sort of had in the chat earlier on one of the philosophies in WoW of class identity. It's not talked. I don't think it's been talked about that much as of the later interviews and things that I have been watching.
hmm
So yeah, what is the general idea there? How far are we going into making sure that classes have what every other class has, and how much are we focusing on the identity of each class?
Yeah, so I mean, we've always viewed class as like this fundamental building block of the WoW experience. It's the lens through which a player views and experiences every aspect of the game world. And it's the first choice you make, right? You're coming in, creating your character, race and class. Do you want to wield a sword, cast spells, have a pet? And that's like a fundamental player fantasy that we've always tried to do everything we can to realize. And I think to really double down on it, we want there to be meaningful differences in what the classes are capable of, the visual vibe and the aesthetic, and just all of that to flesh out the fantasy. I do think, though, that in recent years especially, it has been a challenge to avoid homogenization of classes as we try to make multiple playstyles and paths all valid and all effective. I think in some ways it was simpler to have strong class identity, class fantasy 15 years ago when our end game was basically raiding, and then otherwise it was casual solo play, and that was basically it. And we could say, you know what, these are the classes that are great at healing. These are the classes that are great at AoE damage, at utility, at whatever, and really double down on that and have that be part of what sets them apart from others. But over recent years, I think for the better, the game has a ton of solo play styles and delves and Mythic Plus and people who want to just focus on that, and that's what they enjoy. And as important as class fantasy is, I think most players who love those play styles would also agree that it's not really a satisfactory answer on our part for us to say, like, yeah, I know that you're not really great in Mythic Plus, but hey, class fantasy, you're really good in raids. Oh, you don't like raids? Well, too bad. I guess maybe pick a different class or start liking raids. And so, us shoring up those deficiencies have definitely made the toolkits of the classes a bit more homogenous over the years. So I think we have to lean on visuals. We have to lean on just the overall aesthetic, the names of things even, and try to have class anchored in that way. That's not to say the classes are identical by any means, and obviously they have mechanical differences. But at the end of the day, it's hard in the modern game for us to say to a class, "You're just not good at this portion of the game," when at the same time we're trying to say, if you only like this portion of the game, you can have it your way, play the way you like. We're not going to force you to do other things.
Okay, yeah, that was a big answer there that touched a lot of things. There's one thing I wanted to comment on that. It reminded me of this. It touches a little bit on balancing, but not specific. Not specific questions about balancing, but rather, are you guys generally happy when one spec is doing well, or do you put importance in all the specs being represented? Like as a warlock, for example, in a PV environment, I feel like demo has been the strongest spec in general for a long time. Destro sometimes has its moments in Mythic Plus, but it has felt like demo
Yeah.
has been strong for a longer time. Is there any kind of like what is the thought process behind balancing when it comes to individual specs? Are you guys simply happy that a spec is doing well and that's it, or is there any, yeah, like how do you weigh that?
Um, that's a good question. I think it depends on a few factors. It depends on hybrid DPS like hybrid classes versus pure DPS to some extent. Like if a damage dealing spec is the only damage spec available to a certain class, like if we're talking about Shadow, we're talking about Ret, if they're seen as weak in a particular area of the game or in multiple areas of the game, there's no real recourse. If you're that player of that class, you can't switch to something else. Whereas I think we do understand that among pure DPS especially, it's not uncommon for players to play a couple of different specs. And so if one spec is better at single target damage, that they're better in raids, another spec shines more in dungeons, and they share the atomization for the most part, other than, some secondary stats or a trinket or whatever, that's less pressing of a problem for us to solve. That's not to say that we'll just look at it and say, okay, it's fine that this spec is, towards the bottom in dungeons and we'll keep it that way long term. But when we look at, what we're going to hotfix, what we want to change in terms of real-time balance, that becomes a slightly lower priority when we know that like the most competitive players have this safe harbor option right over there within their class already. But we also, we want to make sure that in the long run, that balance doesn't feel too static. It shouldn't seem like it's the same spec that's always on top, the same spec that's always on the bottom. During a season, we're pretty hesitant to do nerfs once we get past the first few weeks, because people have often locked themselves into what they think they want to play for the season. They've made gearing choices around it. We don't want to meaningfully change that. But new seasons, new patches are an exception, and certainly going into an expansion, it's kind of a fresh reset of all of our balance. And we'll see how that shakes out over the course of Midnight Alpha and Beta.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think it was kind of what I saw, or it felt like that was noticeable, but I just wanted to get it, to ask you about it. I wanted to talk about the big change that's coming with add-ons, cooldown manager, nameplates, and similar. How far are you guys taking the ability for us to customize things? For example, are we going to be able to track enemy cooldowns? Because that's one thing that a lot of add-ons do, whether it's PvE or PvP. This mob has a certain cooldown of this certain ability. Is that information that you guys want us to be able to track in general? Because I don't see that being possible currently. What are your thoughts on that?
It wouldn't be possible through the add-on API. However, we recognize, seeing the cooldown of a major boss ability in an encounter is something that guilds have been raiding with forever. Like actually, literally, when my guild was raiding Molten Core in February of 2005, we had a programmer in the guild who wrote a very simple text Lua add-on that would like spit out when Magmadar was going to fear in chat, because you wanted to know when the main thing was going to happen. Like that's been WoW raiding forever. And so just because add-ons won't be able to know or track when a boss ability got used doesn't mean that information shouldn't be available. And so that's part of why we've built a boss timeline into our encounters going forward. As we go into alpha, we're actually going to have a raid boss testable like day one, as of today, this evening when the servers go up. Beleren, the first boss of March on Keldanas, is going to be testable with all of these bells and whistles available. It's just on normal mode, and the point is not to give feedback on the encounter mechanics or the tuning. We're going to have later waves in beta when we do thoroughly test all of our encounters and get feedback on the tuning and the mechanics. We'll bring guilds in at that point. But we have this available, honestly, just to give players a chance to experience the full UI package, to test add-ons for add-on authors who are working on seeing what they can customize and what they can't. But we want that information to be available. Similarly, in PvP, we're working on improvements to PvP unit frames to highlight some of the major things that players have found it essential to be able to track. At the same time, no, you won't have all of that information at your disposal in real time anymore, but that's going to be a level playing field. Everyone is going to be playing by those same restrictions. So if you're in PvP, you'll both have equal access to equal information, and it'll be who is the most skilled, who is the most coordinated that comes out on top. And as we approach encounters, part of why we're rolling these changes out with a new expansion, with Midnight, is so that we really can build from a blank slate all of our new dungeons, all of our new encounters with this ecosystem in mind. So we can tune, how long you have to react to an ability, how many people something is targeting, and so forth, around creating the same overall level of difficulty that people are used to, but hopefully having it be a more pure expression of your coordination, your ability to execute, and not your ability to manage a bunch of add-ons.
In terms of PvP, do you have examples of an ability which would be trackable, an example of something that wouldn't be? Or maybe I ask directly, like interrupts, for example.
I don't believe interrupts. I think we're looking more at like, trinket, major offensive, defensive cooldowns, the things that sort of determine the flow there. But this is customized, like, sorry, not customizable, but modifiable on our end. I mean, part of why we're rolling this out early is to get feedback about what players still feel seems essential and isn't being communicated clearly enough so that we can make either design or UI changes before we go live.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think in a PvP environment, especially as a caster, knowing if someone interrupted you or not, I know there's like a visual that you can get used to by looking at the character, but if you're not used to doing that, you may not recognize it, and then having that or not makes a big difference. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, we're also looking at calling out, for example, interrupts on nameplates with like the name of who interrupted as something that is just part of the base UI, again, so that you can have that information in real time, not just for PvP, but also in dungeons.
And PvE, just a quick follow-up with the previous thing. You said bosses. What about just regular mobs? Like a trash mob that has a very important cast in or ability in a Mythic Plus, for example. Can you track that?
You wouldn't know that. They wouldn't be able to track the cooldown of that. But again, I think some of that falls back to our responsibilities in designing the game and what information we're giving you.
Yeah.
If there's a mob that seems like just, a relatively harmless mob in the middle of a pack, but it has an ability that will completely wipe your group if you're not paying attention to it, it should be our job to make that ability really obvious with spell visuals, with other callouts. And if you feel like you need, a plater mod, you need a weak aura, you need something to help call your attention to it, honestly, that's the community doing a job that we should have done in the first place. We want to do that, and we want to be forced to do that. And so I think that's feedback we're going to be looking out for very early on as we begin dungeon testing. And if there are things that feel like they're frustrating, not sufficiently telegraphed, we're going to be looking to address that ASAP.
Okay, because I think that's something that people have talked about a lot, that they're worried the information that they previously had, that they will no longer have it, because like you said, add-ons will not be able to do it, so then it depends on you guys deciding, is this important enough, etc. So yeah, in that case, guys, keep giving your feedback. Tell them what abilities, what type of abilities that we want to see, and yeah, and then you guys will keep that in mind. I guess that's the thing that you guys could be, I don't want to say lazy, but you guys could like not worry about it too much because people had add-ons, but now that people can't, then you guys have to actually think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of this, really. I will freely admit that, the player's ability to make add-ons has sort of been a crutch that has let us get away with some designs that had flaws over the years. And I think that's true not just in dungeons and raids, but also as we look at class combat mechanics. I can say that the class changes that we've rolled out, in our blogs over the last day, they're not necessarily things that have been in the works for years. A lot of that actually began earlier this year when we first started talking about our philosophy around add-ons and what we hoped to move towards. And we quickly heard from the community, like, okay, that's all well and good. I agree. I'd love to be less reliant on add-ons, but show me how I'm supposed to play Combat Rogue. Show me how I'm supposed to play Shadow Priest and keep track of these procs, these mechanics, when it's okay to use this ability or when you shouldn't, without a weak aura to tell me when I'm supposed to. And we kind of looked at that and we're like, honestly, they're not wrong. It's like, if you need to track 3 different variables and make a decision in a half-second window about whether you push ability A or B based on that combat state, our default UI is not giving you the information to do that. And so in some cases, the answer was improve our default UI Combat Outlaw, sorry, yes.
It's
half
a
my
rogue
head is in
spec.
classic half the time. You know what I mean? But yeah, half the time the answer was change the UI. The other half of the time, it's like, look at this ability and ask whether this ability is well designed. Why are we making a talent that is asking superhuman reaction of someone if it's even going to be worth the talent point invested in it? Shouldn't we simplify that, keep it challenging, but now it's actually something that you can do without external assistance? And so a lot of the things that we've redesigned have been driven by that.
Gotcha. I really like the direction that things are going, especially with console port accessibility and those type of things. We've talked about that a lot too in the past. Is there any kind of on the topic of UI? Is there any kind of ideas behind or thoughts on improving the UI for using a controller? Because right now, the way the action bars are, it's very keyboard-esque, where in games like Final Fantasy XIV, for example, when you switch to a controller, you have the abilities be, shaped in the way of a controller. Is that something?
That's so. Yeah, I think we've really been focused on just improving hardware compatibility of being able to plug in a controller and not needing to do a ton of remapping to have things work. I know there's great add-ons like console port that will continue to work that
that's
help
what I use.
improve the aesthetics there.
Yeah.
So I think doing a full gamepad UI overhaul isn't something that's currently a priority for us. Our attention has been on continuing to improve, particularly this expansion, the UI for the universal PC experience. It was awesome to see people playing on Steam Decks, people playing, using other control mechanisms. That's something we want to continue to support going forward, but it's not a priority for us as we look at Midnight.
Makes sense. I mean, the add-on works honestly pretty well, and the major thing that you guys added was the what's it called, the interact button. I think that was the biggest thing that you guys added, which made playing on a controller is actually really smooth. You just need the add-on. Okay, let's see. We are starting to almost run out of time. Oh, a small philosophy question on collecting mounts which are no longer available. I saw that the AOTC mount for Legion is coming back for Legion Remix, but the AOTC mount for Mists did not come back for MOP Remix. Was there a specific reason for that, or did it just happen?
Honestly, if anything, I would say that the Mist Remix decision was a bit of an oversight. Some of these are subjective calls, and we just landed on one side of the line, then a different side of the line now. Garrosh heirlooms, for example, were available in Mist Remix, and that is something that went away back in the day as well. We've really tried to err on the side as much as possible of letting people earn things when we feel like we can accurately reproduce the conditions that led to them being earned. So I think the examples of things we've excluded are challenge mode rewards, or this time around the Mage Tower rewards. In both of those cases, like, those systems are kind of incompatible with the nature of what a remix is. Challenge modes and Mists were normalized your gear and your stats. Mage Tower was meant to be something that was a very high level of challenge, whereas the premise of Remix is open-ended power progression, become infinitely strong, break the game. And so those features themselves didn't fit into Remix, and thus the rewards from them also don't. The overwhelming majority of things, 99.99% of awards that have ever been available in WoW continue to be, and we do look for opportunities to return some of those that still aren't through mechanisms like Remix. But I think there will remain a short list of things that probably won't ever be attainable again. And I think that is old challenge mode rewards, the original Mage Tower appearances, very old things like the Scarab Mount or Corrupted Ashbringer. You can probably count them on your hands. And we're not really looking to add too many of those things into the game going forward.
I think that makes sense because there's a difference in challenge difficulty, but so the AOTC MOP, was that just simply didn't think about it, kind of?
Honestly, yeah, it was just a close judgment call where we came down on one side of the line that time and a different side of the line in Legion Remix. I think, if we loop back around and Mists Remix comes back again in the future, which I think is certainly a possibility. These were not meant to be one-time ever events as we build them. We might make a different decision regarding that mount.
Right. There was a very popular event, the Collector's Bounty. And my question is, well, I could ask, is it going to come back? But I'm sure your answer is probably. So instead, could it be considered potentially as one of the weekly bonus event rotations that happen?
That's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea. I have to discuss it with the team. I can say just off the top of my head, I think that if we made it a weekly bonus, it probably wouldn't be as
wouldn't be
large a
rare.
bonus.
Oh, okay.
Because I think it's something we want to be very mindful of. And I know, obviously everyone, like, you want to complete your collections, you want to get the things. We don't want to, we never want to create a world where it feels like you shouldn't even bother trying to farm stuff when the bonus isn't active. And we very easily, if we, did something like this too often or got the tuning wrong, could create a world where we inadvertently just kind of killed instance farming and that activity because people would only do it during the bonus event windows. So
That makes sense.
it's something that's likely to return in some form, and I think that's an interesting idea for us to explore for sure.
Okay, awesome. Oh god, okay. I think that's probably it that we have time for. A fun thing. So in a couple days, we have something called Kanelbullens dag here in Sweden, which is basically a day for cinnamon bun day. And I'm wondering when we can have this holiday introduced into WoW.
I will take that one back to the team. Everyone loves a good cinnamon bun.
Thank you. It's in 2 days, October 4th. Really important.
I don't know that we're going to be able to get that turned around and implemented in time, but maybe next year.
Maybe next year? Oh, that's soon.
We'll see.
Nice, in midnight, confirmed.
Yeah. I mean, look, in your neighborhoods, you're free to have your cinnamon bun parties whenever you want. You can invite everyone from all around. But
True.
yeah, I think,
neighborhood activity. Yes. Okay, quick one. I'm just going to slide this one in. Can we get some pet furniture?
Wait, furniture for your pets?
Like a cat tree in our houses?
So that's another fun idea. So I think our next step is going to be making it so that you can spawn and see your collected pets in your home, in your yard. We need to fix some technical issues to make it so that they can move around the way we'd want and interact with the objects. But I think that once we have pets in your homes, it's only going to be natural for people to want to have items that the pets can interact with. And so, yeah, I mean, I can't give you a guarantee, but I think that's a great idea and something we'd like to look into.
Nice, that's awesome. Is there anything else that you want to tell chat? Or chat, is there anything that you guys want to tell Ian or ask? Well, maybe not enough time for asking, but anything you guys want to say?
I've definitely seen the requests and discussion of new mount achievements. It's on the team's radar.
Thank you.
We want to make sure that we
I
want to make sure.
right.
I know that some folks like Annie here have long since outgrown the achievement options available. We also want to make sure that we have a reward to give that feels worthy of those tiers. I know in the past where it seems like we've kind of like used a recolor or something. That's disappointing. And right now, a lot of our coolest new mounts have been going to other activities, but we need to carve out some stuff to make sure that achievement, mount hunt is properly rewarded.
Cool. So we're going to get a really unique and cool mount. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. No, exactly.
Okay.
Right. Like if you're going to collect that many mounts, like by definition, you have them all. The thing we're giving you better be really cool. Otherwise, what's the point?
True. Then we can show
and yeah, that sword is still in Silithus. We're going to come back to it before the World Soul. Exactly. Before the World Soul Saga is over.
Oh.
For those of you who really like that option, something we're looking forward to rolling out as part of like housing decor are going to be some miniature replicas of some, very notable Azerothian legendary items, artifact items.
Cool.
So potentially down the line, maybe not right away, but later on, if you want a miniature Sword of Sargeras or even like a miniature Frozen Throne, that may be something that you can, find and put in your house.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my god, that's exciting. I need that. I also need to collect them all, so yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I'm sold. Well, thank you so much, Ian, for your time. I really appreciate you being here. And yeah, sorry again about the tech issues at the beginning, and thank you for being so patient.
Sorry as well. No worries at all. A pleasure chatting. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the alpha.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And bye-bye.